Kris Dim was born in Cambodia in 1973, shortly before the Khmer Rouge upended life in that country. Between 1975 and 1979, it's estimated that up to 3 million people died in what would become known as the Cambodian Genocide. After fleeing the country with his family and resettling in the United States, Kris took up bodybuilding as a teenager in Sacramento, California. In 2003, he earned his IFBB pro card by winning the NPC Nationals Light Heavyweight Championship. In 2007, Kris suffered a heart condition that nearly took his life about a month after his 34th birthday. Kris would continue to battle health issues, and against the advice of many, he continued competing in the sport that he loves. After suffering a spinal cord injury, Kris transitioned to the wheelchair division of bodybuilding. Through all his struggles, Kris maintains a positive outlook on life, and his amazing story needs to be heard. Welcome, everybody. This is the inaugural episode of the C4 podcast. I'm your host, John Messina. I'm here with my co-host, the Big Lau, Ko Chandika. Ko, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. What's going on?
Doing well. We have a special guest today, Kris Dim. Kris, how are you?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Welcome, Kris.
Welcome to the show. Before we jump in, I think a lot of people are out there probably wondering how did this Italian guy and the Big Lau come to do a podcast? So we're going to tell you a little bit about it. I was born in California, went to the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, met my wife there. She was born in Laos, left Laos after the war, about 8 months old, came to the US with her family. We now live in the western suburbs of Chicago, which happens to be the home of the Big Lau as well. We live about 5 minutes apart. So anyway, we have 3 kids. They're really big into sports. And my oldest daughter, she's a swimmer. She's committed to swim at the University of Pittsburgh next year. And it's really exciting time for us. Last summer, she went to the United States Olympic trials to take a shot at going to the Tokyo Olympics. Before she did that, the local swim team here had a send-off ceremony for her. And there were several other swimmers from the area that were involved in that ceremony as well. And most of them had their parents there, maybe their siblings. And of course, the swim team was there, all the little kids. But we showed up with this big army of my wife's Laotian family, a bunch of kids holding up their signs, cheering for her, supporting her. And after that, a lot of people came up to me and started saying, wow, they are all really proud of their cousin. That's so great that all these people came out. And I got to thinking, because we have an Italian-American Sports Hall of Fame right here in Chicago. I'm a huge fan of it. I love that kind of thing. Puts a lot of pride in the community. After that, I thought, you know what? The Lao people don't have a Hall of Fame. I said, I think they need one. So I started putting some things together, and I said, there's only one problem. I'm not Lao, and I'm not an athlete. But I said, well, fortunately, there's a guy that lives 5 minutes from me that is both Lao, and he's a very accomplished athlete. So I texted Ko and said, hey, Ko, what do you think of this idea? Texted me back, and he said, you know what? That's exactly what we need. Count me in. So anyway, one day we commandeered a booth at a local Panera there in South Elgin. We're working on this thing. We had our nice little spreadsheet of athletes, and Ko goes, I've been thinking about starting a podcast. And he said, the people you have on this list and that we're putting on this list, they would be great guests. They probably have some really good stories, just like I do. Ko has an amazing story. We're going to tell that story in a later episode. And I was a little skeptical at first. I said, Ko, let's get the Hall of Fame going, and we'll get back to that idea later. But as I started to put together the Hall of Fame and interview these athletes for it, I realized that the athletic accomplishments were one thing, but the amazing stories behind everybody was really what the people, the fans of the Hall of Fame, and everybody that they really liked and got a big source of pride from. The amazing adversity these individuals overcame. So Ko and I were talking, and I said, yeah, Ko, your podcast, I think we ought to do it. And he came up with the idea for the C4 podcast. So Ko, tell everybody a little bit about this podcast.
All right. So I called it C4, Southeast Asian Athlete Achievement Through Adversity. While I love the idea of the Hall of Fame, I'm still having a hard time. I don't know, just never thought of myself as a Hall of Famer or anything, but I was really attracted to that idea because it made aware how many more athletes from Laos there are that we never knew of, like a professional bull rider or a professional skateboarder that we had no idea. But whereas the Hall of Fame addresses the the achievements. The podcast C4 looks at the story, looks at the adversity that the athletes had to go through. And I all think, coming from Southeast Asia, everything that happened with the war, I think we all have a very similar but different story of how we got here. So I came over here, I was born in 71, I came over here in 75. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy growing up in Midwestern USA. It was being the only Asian, only Laotian. So that's why I wanted to start. I just want to tell stories, and I would love the world to hear our stories, And Kris, I thought of you right away because, man, your stories are phenomenal. You come from Southeast Asia, you come from Cambodia, come from a similar area. So I don't know. I'm sure you kind of started. You got here probably around the same time as me, or a little bit later. Tell us about you, and tell us about Cambodia, moving to the States, and what type of what type of issues that you had to deal with.
Yeah, so I was 6 years old when I came to the States. I'm obviously 48 now. My uncle sponsored us. So basically what we did was we escaped the Khmer Rouge. And then we went to Thailand and, as a refugee. And then my uncle sponsored us and brought us to the United States. But it was tough, obviously coming down, not speaking the language. And even though I was only 6, it's still, English is as a second language, and they had ESL, and I'm pretty sure you're in it too. So, pretty much just learning the language. And, when we first came down to America, we stayed with a Caucasian family, they were our sponsor. And just learning the ways, man. I mean, basically we've never had a refrigerator, and it was kind of weird, keeping your food cold. I remember that, and just I remember not, being pretty poor. And it's funny because back then, obviously Bruce Lee was really big, and when you're at school, everyone's kind of making fun of you and thinking all Asian know karate. And basically just learning the language, man. And just kind of gone off from there. And I remember even just Christmas, we would go to the Salvation Army and pick a toy. And our family was pretty poor. And my mom used to she got her license as a hairstylist, and then also at night she would get a load of clothes and she would sew clothes at night. And that was I remember watching my mom, and it was kind of hard for me, even though there's 4 of us. I told her I was going to be somebody when I was growing up, and mom would never have to work again. And that was my drive, man, my driving force to start basically doing well. And I remember having a paper route when I was 11, 12 years old, and making money and helping out and doing everything I can. There's let's see, 10 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment, I remember at the time.
So how many brothers and sisters do you have, Kris?
I have 4 total, including me. And basically I'm right in the middle.
Oh, okay.
But none of them work out, and I remember starting to work out and, going to Kmart and getting a weight,
the red and gray ones. The
yeah,
gray ones,
the with the concrete inside.
Yeah.
And it was a bench press, and I started working out when I was 11, 12 years old, man.
Yeah, great. Yeah, same thing, man. Same work. Just weight set down in the basement. Except I'm the youngest of my family. Yeah, it just sounds like we shared, similar stories. Kung Fu, that probably saved my ass from getting kicked. It's like, stay away from this guy. He knows Kung Fu.
Yeah, there's one difference, Co. I grew up in Sacramento too, Kris, and we didn't have basements there, Co, like you do in the Midwest. So we had to do it in the garage,
Okay.
but it was nice and warm. The weather's not too bad all year around out there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I've lived in Sacramento my whole entire life, and I live in Elk Grove now, but which is right around the corner.
Yep.
And you're right, man. I mean, I grew up in Virginia, when I first came down to the States, and then when I moved to California, it was kind of weird to have summertime and not rain at all,
Mhm.
And you just like, man, what this weather is like super dry, and you just kind of, obviously wintertime, I mean, it's cold, but there's no snow, and and then during the summertime, it's hot and it's dry, and basically there's no rain. So it was kind of weird having that, coming from Virginia where it was either raining or snowing.
Yeah. I hated the snow, man. I still hate the snow, but I've been in the Midwest my whole life, so hopefully one of these days I'm gonna move on out of here. John, you got anything else for Kris?
Yeah. So, Kris, you were pretty young when you left Cambodia, so I'm assuming you don't remember it, but it had to be very traumatic for your family. Did they talk about it? Was it something they talked about in your house? The atrocities,
believe it or not,
genocide?
I remember. I mean,
Wow.
I was 6 years old, and
Okay.
you don't forget the trauma that happens. I remember, basically crossing the swamp and seeing dead bodies, and I remember basically I was that kid. If you ever watched that movie, First They Killed My Father with Angelina Jolie.
Yeah.
I was that kid. I was that little girl growing up. And so I've seen it all, man. I mean, as a little kid crossing, seeing everything, basically anybody who's educated, they killed down to the babies. And I remember basically, seeing babies get smashed on trees. I've seen, I mean, everything, man, as a little kid. So those trauma that happens when you're little like that, you don't forget that, and I remember even staying at the refugee camp, my stepdad, someone stole his boombox, and he ran out after them, and it was dark, and I remember that drizzle rain, and I really never told this story, and I'll never forget it. And everybody went one way, I went the other way, and I remember hearing a couple gunshot, and I was the first one to see him dead, basically on the floor. And that drizzle rain, every time it drizzle rain, even in the United States, I mean, I was even up to 21, that trauma kept coming back to my head, and I had to basically run inside the house because, I every time that drizzle rain hit, I think back of when he was dead, and I didn't get over it until I was 21, so those things you don't forget those.
Yeah.
Very sorry to hear that.
Yeah, so I'm just the atrocities over there were unbelievable, unthinkable, really. And we're glad you guys got out and made it here to the U.S. So
yeah, with the genocide, I mean, they said something about over 300 million people died. So it's pretty crazy to remember those things. Being that little.
Yeah, it was about a third of the population of that country. So about 3 million out of, I think, about 9 or 10 at the time. There's no official records, but what I read, it was insane. It was really terrible. Like I said, anybody with an education, because they wanted to reset everything. They called it the year zero, and purge society, right, of anybody who had an education or outside thinking or influences. So teachers, professors, engineers, doctors, right? You were essentially executed. Everybody else was essentially enslaved and forced to work on collective farms. And then there was starvation and disease after that. And finally, it ended. And the country over there is rebuilding itself, and folks like you, Kris, have rebuilt lives here. So with that, so tell us a little bit more. You moved to Sacramento. What high school did you go to?
I went to Burbank High. Back then they call it Blood Bank because the Bloods and the Crips.
Yeah,
I obviously grew up in the ghetto, and most of my friends are either dead or in jail or in prison. I just kept at it. I wrestled in high school. I played football in high school, and I just, that's what kept me out of trouble.
yeah.
What position in football, Kris?
I played safety, and
Okay.
I played running back.
Right. Nice.
Those are two things I played, but it kept me out of trouble. And then I started bodybuilding, and then at the age of 14, almost 15, I really started getting into bodybuilding at 17 years old. That's when I think I was a junior. Yeah, I was a junior in high school, and that's when I stopped wrestling and I pursued bodybuilding. I did my first show when I was 17, and I went home with first place overall and best poser.
Wow.
And after that, I was hooked.
Yeah. I miss those best poser days, man. I think they're trying to bring them back lately because of classic physique, but for the longest time, there was no best poser.
Yeah, they took it away. At the age of 19, I won the all natural Mr. Universe. And I went in to do the teenager class, and I ended up doing teenager and open, and I won the teenager. And then I won my class. It went by height. So I won the short class. And then I competed against John Hansen for the overall, and he beat me by 2 points.
What year is this?
I was 19 years old, man. So what is that?
92?
I think 80, 89, I think it was.
89. Because John's from my area. John's from Chicago. But
it's funny because he watched me, kind of grow up. And, when I lost him for, and again, I was only a teenager. I was 19 years old in the natural universe. And he watched me, and then 2 years later, I won Mr. California NPC show at the age of 21. Wow. And then right after that, I took 2 years off, and I did the USA. I was 23, and I took 6. And then
you did the USA first as a middleweight, right?
Yeah. I was in middleweight, and they told me stay in the middleweight class, and I didn't care. Yeah. And it took me till I was 29. And actually was at 29 and 28. Anyway, I won the Mr. USA show in the light heavyweight class at 187 pounds when everybody tipped off the weight at 190, 198.
Wow.
And so, I didn't listen to them. I didn't stay in the middleweight class. I just kept putting on size. And then I lost to, I won the USA show when I was 29, and then I took second at the national, and I actually lost to a guy who was a head judge. His name was Greg Valentino at the time, and he is one of the head judges. I think he's from your area.
Mike Valentino.
Yeah. I think it was Mike Valentino. Okay. But anyway, so I lost to him for the overall, and I remember Kevin Laroni, Sean Ray, Milos, and they said he shouldn't even be in the top 5, but because he was a head judge, he won it. I was devastated, man, because I lost to what Milos called, he's a goddamn beach boy. He looked like a beach boy, and then he won that show, even though he never did anything after he turned pro. And I was devastated, man. I was 29 years old. If I lost to somebody who was who deserved it, I would have been fine, but I lost to him, and I was ready. I was done, man. I was like, you know what, BS with this politics. I'm done. I'm not going to compete anymore. And I remember having dinner, and then Paul Dillette came up and talked to me, and he says, you know, Kris, he goes, you're right there from getting your pro card, man. He, you know, if you quit, you'll never get it, you know? And then so when I was 30 years old, you know, I told Milos, I said, man, you know what? I'm going to give it one more shot. If I don't turn pro when I'm 30, I'm done. I'm quitting. And then sure enough, I did the USA and I lost to my friend, what is his name? Richard Jones.
Richard Jones, yeah.
I lost to Richard Jones that year, but I finally won the national that year and got my pro card. And then 4 months later, I decided to compete at the San Francisco Pro. I took top 3 and I qualified for Olympia next to Lee Priest and Dexter Jackson.
Wow.
And so my career took off right away. You know, it's weird that it took me that much time. It took me 16 years to turn pro. And I know you quit and came back. But when I did turn pro, it went fast after that. I mean, I was in, you know, I was voted Rookie of the Year 2004. I was in every single magazine cover, you know, Flex magazine, Muscle and Fitness, Muscle Development, and it just skyrocketed right after that. But you know, it took me that much time. So you know, I always tell the story, you know, like it's kind of like pumping the well. You know, you just pump and you pump and you pump and nothing happens. And you keep pumping, nothing happened. Keep pumping, nothing happened. And finally, you get water. You know, it's the same thing with my career. It took me that long, 16 years to turn pro. But when I did turn pro, it took off right away and it skyrocketed. And, you know, it's crazy because at that time, you know, I don't know if you remember, but there wasn't any Asian bodybuilders at that level. And I remember my friend Hide, you know, he was just coming up and he says, if Kris can do it, I can do it. And being the first Asian to get on the Mr. Olympia stage right after that, it's just, you know, it's kind of like the 4 minute mile, right? You know, nothing happens. And then once somebody broke the 4 minute mile, the following year, there's 1,500 people that broke it. And right after I turned pro, that's when all the other Asians feel like, you know what, they can do it too, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's incredible you coming from, you know, Southeast Asia. Like you don't hear that when people say Asian, you think, you know, China and Japan, Korea, right? But you know, when I say Laos, it's like where? Well, they don't know that area, Southeast Asia. You know, Laos, Cambodia, Myanmar, or Burma. You know, so it's that. I think that's really awesome that you were. Didn't you win Best Asian Bodybuilder Award? Best Asian bodybuilder in the world?
Yeah. 2004, I was voted the best Asian bodybuilder in the planet. You know, and like I said, it just took off from there. You know, so it felt good to open up every single magazine and you're always in it, you know. So back then it was like, you know, it was surreal, you know, because it was like my goal was just to turn pro. And I didn't think that when I did turn pro, it was just going to take off, skyrocketed as quick as it did.
No.
You know,
I saw you in '99, and I saw you in '99 as a middleweight. I was actually there. It was at Santa Monica, I think. And I remember I didn't even like the guy that won. I think it was Eric Otero or something that won the medals that year. But and I saw your potential and what you know and what you're going to be like, and I was like, man, this guy's crazy. And then a year later, you pop up as a light heavyweight, you know. So I was like, wow. So not many people can jump a class and then, you know, go right away to first or second. When you jump a class, you're kind of like starting all over, right? You know, you're jumping up light heavy, you're starting in the top 10, maybe top 5, do a few shows. You were right in the mix right away once you hit light heavy. So, wow.
Yeah, you know, you got to just follow what, you know, I always believe, like, don't worry about the naysayer. do what it is that's going to take you where you need to get to. Like, and a lot of people, they just kind of listen to other people, and the judges told me to stay in the middleweight class. But to me, it was like, you know what, if I was going to do some damage, and back then, remember, they didn't have any weight class. And I knew that if I kept improving and kept getting better and better and better, I was able to compete with the pro when I did turn pro. And even though it took me a while, it was just, I didn't care. It was like, you know what, I'm going to do what I can. And at 5'6", I won the light heavyweight class at I think close to 198 pound right at the tip of the class.
Oh, wow.
And then when I did turn pro, I competed anywhere between 205 to 215. But obviously, I was able to at least be in the mix at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and even at the San Francisco Pro, I was beating guys like David Henry, Gustavo Bedell, Chris Comer. I mean, all these guys that I've seen in the magazine, and then all of a sudden you're getting on stage and you're beating them. So it felt good to like, take off the way it did, but it was tough, man. I mean, just to be able to get to that level. But I didn't really care what anyone said. I just knew that the potential that I had, and I just kept believing in myself and just kept pushing.
Yeah. Did your family give you a lot of support in bodybuilding? Like my family, they didn't. They're like, no.
My mom thought I was crazy at first,
Okay.
but when I did get to the level that I did, suddenly she's like showing all her friends, my son's on this cover of this magazine and this and that. But from the beginning, man, it was kind of a lonely road. That bodybuilding is a individual sport. So, but I did it because I enjoyed it. I hated the workout, but I liked the results, and that's what kept me in the mix.
Yeah.
So for the civilians like myself out there, tell us, it seems such an extreme sport. You're trying to make the human body do things it wasn't meant to do and look like it wasn't meant to look like. What goes into it? I mean, tell us about your routine, your diet.
It's people always ask that question all the time, and like, they're like, what's the secret? And honestly, there's none. It's hard work. Is getting in the gym even when you don't want to, pushing the limits that even if you don't want to. I mean, you have to be able to endure the pain, and you just push through. But it's also obviously the diet. The diet has to be on. I mean, I was eating a lot of food because that's the only way I can put on size. I can get sick and drop 10, 15 pounds overnight.
Wow.
So the way my body is, being that my metabolism is so fast, I was eating 8 meals a day, and I was eating 10 to 12 ounces of protein per meal just to be able to put on the size that I need to put on. And of course, so it's like math. I always tell people, like, if you eat right, you get your sleep, you work out hard, you take your supplements, you do everything you need to do, you're going to get the right answer. But if you miss one or two of those things, you're not going to get where you need to get to. You might be able to see some results, but not the full potential of what you need to get to.
Yeah. Well, Kris, so we know you're a father. How old were you when you became a father? And tell us, did that sort of change your life or perspective at all?
Yeah, I was young, man. I was 21 when I had my first son. And it does open up your eye, and you have to mature really fast because you're a dad. And I opened up my first business when I was 21 years old. I opened up a Max Muscle nutrition store, and at the time there's only 12 stores existing, and mine was actually, I was doing about 50 to 60,000 a month out of that one store, and I was only 21. And at 25, I opened up my second and my third store right away. And so like a lot of people always think that, hey, bodybuilding, but I had to raise a family. I had, basically my ex-wife and my kids, and then I had to work the business, and then also try to bodybuild and try to get my pro card at the same time. So like, a lot of people go, how do you do everything at the same time? It's like, how do you have multiple max muscle store? How do you work out? How do you, you know, balance out with your family? And to be honest with you, you have to plan it out, because else, you know, it doesn't happen. I mean, I tell people, like, you know what, anything is possible. You'll never have time. You have to make time. So, you know, Friday night was our date night. Sunday was our family day. And when I first opened up the store, I worked 7 days a week by myself, open and close. You know, I would open up at 9, 10 in the morning, and I was closed at 6, 7 o'clock in the evening time. And then I would work out twice a day. I would get in the morning, 4 a.m. in the morning, I would work out. And then I would get to my store, take a nap, go make a deposit, run the store until I was at 7 o'clock, get back into the gym, and then work out again. And then after that, get home, cook all my meals for the next day. And that was my routine, you know. And the discipline that goes into it, you know, I never, in 16 years, believe it or not, I've taken off 1 or 2 days, the most on as far as on you know, as far as rest day. Other than that, I was consistent for 16 years, and I never taken a break at all, ever.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that sounds a lot like Arnold Schwarzenegger's story. If you listen to his, that's what it takes, I guess, to get to that level and be successful. And your son, we understand he's an MMA fighter, right?
Yeah, he trains with Uriah Faber, Team Alpha Male. He's been doing it. Both my kids, they've been doing jiu-jitsu. And since they're like, my older one, he's been doing it since he was 9 years old, and he started training at Uriah's place back then. But, you know, he finally now is like 100% committed. And, you know, his fight was supposed to be this last Sunday, and a couple guys back out on him. So he didn't have it. The one before that, same thing. 4 backed out on him. He didn't have it. The one before that, same thing. So it's frustrating. So finally, you know, he's like, you know what, I'm just going to go pro. Because I told him, I go, you know, fight as many amateur fight you can, because that's how you're going to learn. Even like McGregor, you know, he lost a bunch of amateur fight, but when he did turn pro, you know, he obviously he did really well for himself. And, you know, so finally now he's like, you know what, Dad, he goes, I can't get a fight, so I think I'm just going to go pro. And then that way it's contracted and they have to fight.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, you know, everything seemed to be really on the up for you in life. And then you were hit with sort of a personal tragedy, had a heart attack. Maybe tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, it wasn't a heart attack. It was an aortic dissection.
Okay.
And it was back in 2009. You know, I felt 1,000 pound on my chest. And then I told my client to call the ambulance. And then, you know, I was able to slow my breathing down until the ambulance got there. And I just remember waking up and my chest was cracked. And they told my family back then that they weren't going to sure if I was going to wake up. And if I was going to wake up with brain damage and paralysis put together. And I got up, and miraculously I was fine. But you know, walking a point A to point B, I was out of breath, you know, and I had to start walking on the treadmill, and then I was able to walk faster, and then I was able to run, and I started picking up 3-pound weights, and then 5, and then 10, and miraculously muscle memory came back. 6 months later, I gained all my size back, and I wasn't ready to end my career like that, you know. So I came back, and so 2007, I believe. Oh yeah, 2007 was when that happened. 2 years later, I came back, and then I decided to do another bodybuilding show. And when they saw my name on the roster, they're like, "What's Dim doing to himself?" You know, he's, you know. And then I took top 3 and qualified for the 3rd Mr. Olympia. So, but then, you know, right after that, I did the Olympia. That's when they just had the 202. I didn't do too well at that show. And then so I decided, you know what, there was a Sacramento bodybuilding show at the time, and they didn't have any weight class. That was all open. And I decided to come back, and I did that show, and I beat out Mark Dugdale. I believe that took top 3 at the Olympia, the 202. And I came back and redeemed myself and took 4th in the open show. And that's when I just said, you know, I'm good. I'm going to retire, you know, right after that. And a couple years later, I felt 1,000 pound on my chest again. And I went in again, and they did the ascending, and then they did the descending, which is they cracked me open again. And then a couple years after that, they told me that, you know, the rest of my aorta was starting to expand. So, you know, the guy who did the second surgery said, you know, because I had to go back to my health insurance. It was a different hospital. They said, don't let him do the stent. If you let him do the stent, it's not going to hold up. Make sure they do a full cut. And they talked me into doing the stent. And of course, it didn't hold up like they said. And then I had to rush into the emergency. And they cut me from the back of my shoulder blade through my rib cage all the way to the front of my stomach. So they pretty much fillet me. And that was the 4th surgery. And they took the stent out, fixed me the right way. When I woke up, I couldn't feel my legs, couldn't move my toes. They had me in this ice suit for about 2 days, and I was freezing cold, and I couldn't understand why they did it. And then after 2 days, I said, you know, I'm cold, please take this off. And then the doctor came back in, and they were trying to prolong my spinal cord and see if it would come back. And he says, you know, Kris, and he looked like he was in tears. He was the one who did my second surgery. He says, I don't know what I did everything I was supposed to do. And, you know, there's a chance you'll never walk again. You know, you have a T11 spinal cord injury. And he just came back from New York. He had to go do a seminar for aorta and athletes, sports athletes. And he says, it's surreal. He goes, I looked on the big screen and there you were. And I told him, you know, if you know, thank you for saving my life. And if it's the legs that I got to deal with, then, you know, I'll survive and I'll just push through. And it's been a battle ever since then, you know, to be honest with you, because a lot of people don't understand. And you're thinking, okay, it's just the legs, but, you know, I got this precious sore in my right butt cheeks that's been there for about 6 years and it hasn't healed yet. You know, I got nerve pain 24 hours a day because from being cut. The best way to explain it is like it's like stun gun and sandpaper when it touches my shirt. And, you know, I have to use a catheter. And it just, you know, every 3-4 hours, and it backed up my kidney. And then so my kidney level kept dropping and I couldn't understand why. I was feeling like shit. My face was starting to swell up. My legs were starting to swell up. And I went to the emergency room. They did they test out my kidney, my blood work. And my kidney function dropped down to 7%. Wow. And so I had kidney failure pretty much. And they started dialysis, you know, about four months ago. And 3 days a week, I gotta, you know, go do dialysis where they take your blood. You know, I'm sitting in that room about 3.5 to 4 hours, 3 days a week, and you come out annoyed. So you got to try to keep your head right because there's 50 machines in this place. There's 50 recliner and it beeps for every little things. So if there's a kink in it, it beeps. If You have 10 minutes left, it beeps. If it's time, it beeps. So it's louder than a car alarm. So imagine sitting in this room for 3 days a week for almost 4 hours and then having to deal with that. So it's been a rough road, to be honest with you.
Yeah. So somewhere in there, you were actually competing in a wheelchair division of bodybuilding, right?
I decided to come back and challenge myself. I haven't competed in 10 years. And I said, I'm going to challenge myself so that way other people see that they can do it too. And to be honest with you, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole entire life, because when your legs isn't working, you can't plant your feet, you can't get into these machines, you can't do a lot of things, and you have to really improvise. And to be honest with you, without my wife helping me, taking the weights off, putting the weights on, and she was my legs, I wouldn't be able to look the way I did. But it was more of a challenge. I wanted to challenge myself, and I was getting depressed, and I was getting a gut for the first time, and I said, you know what, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna challenge myself, and I'm gonna take a picture in a year and show people that this is possible. And I don't know if you ever seen that picture of me before. It's right behind me, right on top. It's
Yeah.
my fat picture, and then right after I took my picture in the wheelchair, and I did it. I mean, took second at the Arnold Classic, third in the wheelchair Mr. Olympia. But I didn't want to challenge myself. I wanted to show other people that no matter what happened in life, you can keep going on, you can keep pushing yourself, and life doesn't stop just because of life situations and tragic.
Yeah, really, it's amazing what you were able to do and keep a positive outlook through all that. There's another athlete, Justin Fong Savan, who we hope to have on. We kind of got to know him through the founding of the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. At 18 years old, he was shot and his spine was severed, and he went on to win a bronze medal at the Paralympics in Tokyo. And just hearing his story, yours, it really puts in perspective for some folks like me who haven't had to overcome that adversity of that magnitude. It's incredible what you guys have done, and you're truly an inspiration to a lot of people out there that are struggling to overcome stuff like that.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, life situation happens, and your tragic is obviously worse than anyone else, because obviously that's what in your head. But I always tell myself, whatever you're going through, someone else has it worse than you do, and you can push through, you can get over it. And when I see other people like not being able to drive, waiting for a transit to pick them up, and here I am getting in my car, putting my wheelchair in my car myself, learning how to drive with hand control. I mean, that was an adjustment on its own, being able to like, okay, how am I going to get this wheelchair in my car? How am I going to learn how to drive with hand control? I remember going on Amazon, ordering a hand control. I didn't have the permanent one put in. Stuck it on myself and started driving around the neighborhood. My younger son was in the car, and I remember he was like, "Please, Dad, don't let my dad crash." And I just started driving. I mean, it's crazy because when you have a tragic like that, they take your license away. And for the first couple of years, I drove without a license until I got pulled over, and they didn't even give me a license they didn't even give me a ticket for no license. They gave me a ticket for no front license plate. And that's when I was like, you know what, maybe this is a sign that I better go get my license.
Yeah. I mean, here in America, that's our freedom, right? Without our license, that's just how we are, our society.
Yeah, so I went and got my license. I remember taking the written test again. Even though you've driven for years, it took me like a couple of try to get to pass my written test.
Yeah. Wow. So I think your bodybuilding career is over. You're retired from that, but you train people. You consult now, Kris. Is that what you're
Yeah,
doing?
I mean, I do online coaching, and I I used to have my own gym, about 14,000 square feet, and it was called pretty much Sacramento. And I had that for a couple of years, and I had a bunch of trainers in it, and it did well, but it was the headache of running a gym. I mean, my overhead was about 45 to 50,000 a year. I mean, a month, and I was making about 8, 10,000 after that. I didn't want to deal with the headache anymore. So the crazy part about it is my business partner and I, we put close to $1 million in this place. And I believe life was so short. I sold it for $40,000 just to walk away.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And then I had a couple boot camp that we own, Fit Body Boot Camp, and we ran that for a while. And then my wife and I look at each other and go, what are we doing? And getting there at 6 a.m. and not leaving until 8, 9 o'clock at night. And we sold that. And then as soon as we sold it, COVID hit, thank God. And now we converted our gym and our garage into a gym. So I'll train people there, and I train people online, and it's been a blessing.
Yeah, that's good. When you grew up in South Sac, that was a pretty rough time. I was out to the east, and I went to Ponderosa High School, big wrestling school. I don't know if you've heard of them, but that was the area that we had to go play a football game down there. We'd have the police escort and all that. I think it's gotten better, but what advice would you have to the kids growing up in kind of those rougher areas, who want to achieve something like this, and how can they steer clear of all those influences around them?
I was pretty lucky. Later on, I had a good mentor. He was my workout partner. His name was Leonard Crabtree, and he is a pretty humble guy. He multimillionaire, but didn't really talk about it much. And I remember sitting in his because he owns 25% of 25 acre of pretty much building material business. And I was sitting in his office one day, and somebody brought in a $1.2 million check. I've never seen it.
Wow.
And I said, hey, could I see that? And I said, what's this? And he said it was it's one of the vendors that he goes through. He does a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day net. And I said that this is one check, and I go, whoa. I said, how many of these pretty much how many of these vendors do you have? And he said probably a little bit over 100, but then there's smaller one. So it opened up my, I couldn't believe it. I'm like, okay, so he's got over 100 vendors that's coming in and giving him a $500,000 to $1 million check. And we stayed at the finest restaurant. We always, we stayed at the Ritz-Carlton. I mean, he's drinking, $1,500 bottle of wine, and it, honestly, that was my mentor growing up. And if I didn't have a good mentor, I don't know what would happen. And that's what made me always set my bar so high, where I had 3 Max Muscle Store at the age of 25. I did over 7-figure. And, so I always tell people, keep yourself out of trouble by playing a sport, but then find yourself a good mentor that could mentor you and to get where you need to get to in life. So to me, if you want to get into real estate, find somebody who's done extremely well in real estate. If you want to get into bodybuilding, find someone who's already done it and just have a mentor you. And that's what kept me out of trouble. And that's what set my bar so high till this day. Today, I mean, my wife actually does better than I do. I mean, she makes more money than I do. But end of the day, between us two, we've been really blessed. And that's how I always look at life. Like, find yourself a good mentor.
That's great.
What's going on with you, Cole? What's been happening in your life?
Well, I'm not bodybuilding anymore. I think it's been a few years, and I don't know how. I know with me, when I quit bodybuilding, it was trying to get used to. I was trying to get used to like civilization, like the normal world, and I was just trying to deal. I'm just trying to deal with that. I've had some, when I when I had my kids, that's when I quit bodybuilding, and then I fell into like a deep depression. I ended up drinking a lot, so I had to clean up my act before I came back, and I actually, then eventually, 2014, I got my pro card. But yeah, I'm just, I'm trying to fit in life, man, and you're still trying to figure it out. I never realized after I left bodybuilding, I never realized how much I had going on mentally. Like, I know as Asians, we don't talk about mental health a lot. We're starting to talk about it, but as Asians, you're supposed to be tough and you're supposed to hold it in and never talk about it. And my dad, remember, never cry and stuff like that. And like, I didn't know what to do with myself after I got done competing, because like at that moment, all my friends disappeared. What just happened? Been in this sport for how many years, and like everybody just seemed to fall apart, and I they fell away and disappeared. So I had to just trying to get used to that, and working on right now I'm working on myself, trying to be an advocate for mental health, and that's why I started this podcast, was to bring awareness to it, that we do have our struggles that sometimes people don't see, right? We have the physical struggle that people can see, right? You need to put on 10 pounds, you need to put on, I need to drop 10 pounds, or I need to get stronger. But a lot of people, we don't see the struggle that's going inside someone. And until you ask the person, and until they talk about it, do you really know? Like, everybody thinks, you turn pro and everything should be great. I thought turn pro was going to fix my life, right? But there's more to it. There's the lonely nights that you're in the gym, right, doing cardio, and no one's like, and you're tired, and you just want to give in, and nobody understands, right? Nobody understands unless you had a really good training partner, or unless, like you said, having a mentor. I didn't do really well until I had someone like I had George Vera help me out. So having that, I think what was kind of got me over the hump. And I wish I would have got, someone like earlier, like you started working with Milos at the USA's, right? Back in early 2000. I wish I would have had some type of a mentor. I like that word you're talking about. I wish I would have had some type of mentor that kind of guide me. And not only in the physical aspect of bodybuilding, but the politics, man. I didn't understand politics. I just, like, you talked about getting beat by Mike Valentino, when he shouldn't have won. I didn't understand it at all. It just blew my mind. And now it's even like the politics, it's even worse, right? It's just everything. So
yeah, you gotta do it because you enjoy it. Because if you let the politics, it'll mess with your head. It'll get to you, And so even like when I turned pro, I kept competing because it was for my fan. I kept competing because I just worked on getting better and better and better. And then, I always tell people, like, bodybuilding is all about making improvement. And as long as you're making improvement, don't worry about your placing. Just keep worrying about getting better.
Yeah.
Because, if you let your placing get to you, it'll mess with you, and you're going to want to quit.
Yeah. I've had those moments, a lot of second places that should have been first, so that's just part of the sport, though. Again, I never was one to play like the politics game. I just wanted to work on me. I just knew I had to get better. But there's people in this business, I even call it sometimes a business, that just, they play the judges, or they play the game, and they're very good at it. But to me, bodybuilding is more than a sport or a business. Like, it was an art form for me. It's like, you have this chance to create your body the way you want it to, and you have a chance to, by posing, display it any way you want it to. And that was just, to me, it's just always been an art form.
Yeah, for me, what kept me motivated was after I turned pro, and then after I won, took top 3 my first pro show, I got picked up by Weider.
Okay.
So I was sponsored by Weider for 2 years, and then right after my accident, when I came back in 2009, I was sponsored by Optimum Nutrition.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. I remember.
Yeah. So, it was a blessing. with Weeder, it was a good contract. I had a fat contract with them, and that was just kind of like the icing on the cake. The business was the business, which is my nutrition store, and getting that extra check every single month with Weeder was just kind of the motivation of getting into the gym, where a lot of people would get in the gym and they just kind of like, okay, I need to work out. Yeah. When I got into the gym, because I was getting ready for the Mr. Olympia too, it was like, you know what, this is business, this is work, this is me getting into the gym and, working, just like people work a job. To me, when I got into the gym, I trained like it was my last workout. And between the contract and between seeing results, that's what kept me motivated to keep on going.
Awesome. John, you got anything to add?
No, this was a great conversation, Kris. We appreciate you coming on. Thank you for your time. We really wish you luck. You got a lot going on still in your life. You're a man who juggles many things, and
you're truly an inspiration to people. That's why I told John I wanted you.
Yeah,
really
I think so. I would agree. So yeah, thank you, Kris.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me on the show. And those guys that are listening to this interview, really, really pay attention to what you need to do in life to keep getting better. To me, that's always something I always tell people, like, try to keep setting goals for yourself, write it down. A lot of people, they tell themselves, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that. And then, till this day, my wife and I, what we do is we'll sit down and we'll set our goals for every single month, and, financially what we need to do, and setting goals of everything else to keep getting better. And, as long as you're doing that, then, it's worth living. It's worth being on this. And to me, I always, tell people, like, what, there's a purpose why you're still on this earth. So, push everything to the fullest.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Kris.
All right, Kris. You have a good one, man.
All right. Thanks for having me on the show. You guys have a great day.
All right. Take care.
This episode was brought to you by the Lao American Sports Hall of Fame. Visit us on the web at laoamericansports.com. That's LAO Americansports.com.